question about the easy button. How do I get past pressing the easy button? Do you want to give a little context for what the easy button is in case people aren't familiar with that term?
Yeah, so this is an email we sent out at the end of January. Just for anyone who doesn't know, at the end of every month, the last Wednesday of the month, we send out essentially a special email. It's our Grown Ass Woman newsletter series. It's written by Annie or me, and it's usually a little deeper. Goes a little deeper, and it's like, I think a lot of women are on our email list specifically for that email.
Well, that's what we'd like to think.
Yes. And this particular email had an enormous response to it. Mm-hmm. I can't believe how many people replied, mind blown, called out, etc. So the easy button is that button we press in life to get ourselves out of discomfort or even pain. And we are surrounded by easy buttons, okay? And I'm not talking about literal easy buttons. I'm talking about figurative easy buttons that are everywhere. For a lot of people, it's food. Some people, it's alcohol. For some people, it's television. For some people, and I mentioned this in the email, it is focusing on their children's wellness and success because focusing on their own is too uncomfortable for them. Mm-hmm. And I think this really hit the nail on the head for so many women, the way they busy themselves with life to avoid doing their own work, right? Mm-hmm. So easy buttons are everywhere, and it's the button you press to punch out of the commitments you make to yourself. So this person is obviously referring to that email, and she's saying, how do I get past this? How do I stop?
Yeah.
You go ahead. Go for it, Annie.
Well, so as always, I think first things first is understanding the awareness or having the awareness that you are pressing these easy buttons, because I think we can tell ourselves a lot of stories about these things, about these easy buttons. I deserve it. I need this. This is my reward for surviving a hard day. Or there's other things that are more important, and we can justify the use of perpetually pressing these easy buttons, right? So having the awareness and the honesty within yourself to say, I'm doing this and it's actually not helping. It's hurting, right? Is step one.
Yes, so that's important. Step one is always awareness, like identifying your easy buttons. Sometimes I think people don't think at all. They just start feeling this edge of discomfort, and they pop over and focus on something else that they're good at, feel competent in, that they feel motivated to do, because that feels good.
It feels productive oftentimes.
Yes.
Yeah. I just listened to a coaching call with a woman who consistently was dipping out of her movement routine because other people needed her. Her kids needed her. There was other things to be done. And the reward was when she was doing those things, it feels productive. It feels like look at all this stuff I'm getting done. But the one thing that's not getting done is her movement habit, right? So
taking care of herself.
Yeah.
Yes.
So awareness is step one. And assuming that you've recognized the way I'm using these behaviors is not helpful, it's actually hurting, and you want to begin to shift that, you have to accept that this is going to require you facing some discomfort. It's not going to be comfortable and easy, and maybe even the thing that you want to do in the moment. Mm-hmm. And a question that I often ask members is, what would change for you if you just accepted this is going to be uncomfortable and hard for a while? Yeah. Instead of, because when you're comparing, like, do I want to sit with my feelings or do I want to have 2 glasses of wine? Like,
yeah,
in the
moment you want, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Our behavior change, pursuing behavior change and better habits is almost always for our future self. Mm-hmm. It almost always feels like a sacrifice to your current self, but the goal is to move towards a future self that you want to be. And I think that's important to understand and have awareness around, just as far as managing your expectations. There are so many women who run away from behavior change because it feels uncomfortable, and there's some alarm going off in their head that, well, if it feels like this, I shouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to accept like this is normal, I'm going to feel uncomfortable, I'm probably not going to want to do this in the moment, and I can do it anyways, what would change? Like you said, so many people experience that discomfort and they're like, I'm out. I'm doing something wrong. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. There should be an easier way, a more magical way. It should just click for me. Right. Mm-hmm. And the thing that may need clicking is actually you just doing it. Right.
Yeah. I also want to share that, people aren't alone, right? This isn't like a flaying here from me and Annie. I shared in the email, and I've shared multiple times in this podcast, how challenging I have found it to overcome my barriers to moving. What I shared in that email is I stopped pressing the easy button on my workout commitment. And I also shared that the thing I do the most to avoid working out is clean my house. Because like you were saying, it feels good. Like there's always a mess somewhere in my house. And if I am feeling some discomfort around that commitment and it's like go time, I can easily start piling things on my list and tell myself those are a bigger priority. And it just feels good to get something done. Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So nobody's alone here. You're not alone. I know a lot of us, we kind of isolate ourselves, and that's another barrier to behavior change because we tell ourselves the story that we're a special kind of failure. You're human. If you're doing this, you are human. You're pursuing comfort. It's normal, natural to be moving yourself into comfortable places. Unfortunately, what that's creating for a lot of people all around us is choosing comfort in the moment is actually leading to a greater life discomfort, mm-hmm. right? Walking around in a body that doesn't feel comfortable, walking up a hill and having, just no stamina, and that isn't comfortable. And so it's also looking at it like you have to endure these small discomforts in the behavior change process in order to feel more comfortable in a bigger, more fulfilling way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said there, Jen. Such a great reminder that we don't really get to avoid the discomfort. We just usually kick it down the road and have to face that discomfort sooner or later, most often.
Yeah.
One thing that I think can be really helpful that's more tangible to this conversation that might help you start to make more future self aligned decisions in these moments when you would typically choose comfort over discomfort, can be to just expand your consideration for how you're making that choice. So many of us, we are just thinking like, what does present mean? What do I want right now? Right. Mm-hmm. And again, as you noted, it's very human to just prioritize comfort. That every single one of us wants to be comfortable in this moment, right? But if you expand your consideration to also include what does this look like for future me, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, if I continuously choose this most of the time.
Yeah.
And start to think like, what does future me think? What does future me want? What would future me encourage me to choose in this moment? And that can really give you some perspective. Because the truth is, this sounds so kind of cheesy, but if you aren't looking out for future you, who is?
Right. You are, you got to have you in this world. You have to have you.
It's our responsibility. And if you don't want to take responsibility for looking out for future you, that's okay. But then you also bear the consequences of that.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth of life for all of us.
I also want to add here is that it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom, right? So it's not this like binary black and white current me or future me. You can find ways to make your behavior change discomfort more tolerable. Okay. It doesn't have to be, I'm jumping in the deep end into this freezing cold water type of experience. It can be the experience of putting your feet in, getting wet, mm-hmm. right? And so that's just to use like an analogy of like getting into a pool. I have built in things into my life that help my habits feel more tolerable. So when I go to work out, I've got a TV in my workout space, and I'll often put on a show that's really enjoyable. It's a little bit distracting from counting reps. It gives me, something to just be entertained while I'm doing this workout. I do the same thing actually when I'm doing meal prep. I'll bring my computer out and I'll often put on a little TV show while I'm chopping up vegetables, right? It's not just doom and gloom. It's not just, my life's going to be boring if I am prioritizing future me, there's lots of little ways that you can pair doing something that you maybe don't particularly like, but you accept that it's important for your health and your future, with something that you do truly enjoy. And I just had a coaching call about this yesterday, and it blew a woman's mind that she could, for one, she could only lift weights for 5 minutes. That could be her first commitment. And number two, she could listen to a podcast while she was doing it. Like it just all of a sudden made that change doable. So think that through. Like, how could I make this change doable?
Yeah. Yeah. I also see an additional comment in the thread here about, a woman expressed, I talked myself out of it once, but then overrode it. And I want to say, like, when you are in the process of changing behaviors and creating like new patterns and habits, it's not going to be like, oh, I make this decision once and therefore I make it every time from this moment on. It's take the perspective of like, what would it look like to just inch this decision more and more and more in favor of something that's helpful to my health and my values, right? Instead of consistently choosing this path. Like maybe it starts like every other choice. It's like, okay, that's a win, right?
Yeah.
And then just over time, more and more, you get more kind of deposits in the behavior that you want to make. And
your decisions are like walking into a bank, and are you going to deposit into current me account, or are you going to deposit into future me account? Sometimes you will deposit into current you account. Often that's a withdrawal, I'll say. But it's just over time that those deposits build. And I think it's almost like a teeter-totter, seesaw, whatever you call them down there in America. You know, it's kind of precarious in the beginning, right? That teeter-totter is just kind of like, are we doing this? Are we doing the change? What are we doing? Sometimes you'll make that commitment once, you'll avoid it the next time, you'll recommit, and it kind of sits there in the balance for a bit. One of the reasons we never tip over into becoming the person we want to be, making the choices consistently that we want to be making, is because in that teeter-totter moment, I find people often dip out. They go back to the easy button. And it's that teeter-tottery place can be quite uncomfortable. I'm working with somebody right now inside of our program who's, she hasn't lost any weight this last month. She's showing me her habit tracker, and we're looking at when she's making decisions that are a yes to weight loss and when she's making decisions that are a no to weight loss. And honest to goodness, she doesn't have to change anything for February. Just keep going. Keep going with these commitments that you have, and just let more time pass, and let's keep that momentum going. Let's keep that consistency building. I just think a lot of people dip out too quickly on behavior change. They just have very unrealistic expectations about how long it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta have some resilience when it comes to behavior change, because you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna forget. Things are going to happen. You're going to get caught up in present you again. Like, this is part of it, right? And this is why coaching is so helpful, because when that happens, you have a team of coaches to say like, I'm doing that thing again, help me out here, and give you kind of like a touchstone grounding. Like, hey, this is normal. It's okay. No need to freak out. Like, we're just going to carry on.
Yes. There's a woman yesterday that I coached that was in our program a year ago and has now rejoined because she's ready to like keep going with her journey. And she was like, I cannot believe how long I waited to join. We have just figured out in one session how to move past something that I've been ruminating on for a year. I was like, yeah, that's why you join coaching.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Great question.